Support for this podcast comes from the Bushwick Book Club, Seattle, staging a monthly evening of original music inspired by literature since 2010. For upcoming events and more information, please visit thebushwickbookclubseattle.com. Hello, my name is Tom Rorem, and you are listening to Stories to Write Songs About, a podcast that features a story and an original song inspired by it. For the last episode of the season, I've invited my family on to discuss the cars that we all grew up with. You see, there are societal and cultural celebrations for coming of age. These can be religious traditions, family traditions, or things that are allowed by law. And for many families, getting your first car is one such marker. The hard work of suffering through driver's ed classes, studying for and passing the written exam, and absolutely nailing the parallel parking and the driving test make for a sweet moment when you get to hold your license for the very first time. This could also be accompanied by the keys to your very first car. Used most likely, but will reliably bring you to school and around town with your friends. Your father and mother negotiated a good price at the dealer. With just over 100,000 miles and proper maintenance, mind you, you'll most likely be driving this through your college years and beyond, possibly. This is a quaint and lovely image, and it's common for many folks. It is, however, far from reality in my family's life. Through the years of our adolescence, it seemed my parents understood that in a family with 4 kids, there would be a definite need for multiple cars. These vehicles, however, always came with that special kind of character you can only get from a thing that is about to fall apart in the middle of the highway. Broken AC, overheating issues, and musty smells plagued these cars. It gave us resilience and a sense of pride, knowing that we could push start a vehicle, shift with a broken gearbox, or judge how fast we were going based on what gear we were in and how many RPMs we were at. Despite the challenges, we did cherish the times that we had in these vehicles. From the hot dog roaster antenna on our VW Vanagon or the lack of power steering in the 1985 Subaru Legacy, there was never a dull moment in the history of Rorem automobiles. Friends and extended family will attest to the ubiquitous nature each car had. Some could be heard from miles away, while others might not be seen at all due to being stalled out in the middle of an intersection in downtown Olympia. So stick around and hear us recount our fondest memories of these infamous, rusty old junkers. With me today are my 3 siblings, Sarah, Ben, and Jake, as well as my parents, Mom and Dad. Just kidding. Their names are Dave and Martha. Each of the siblings prepared a story about a specific car in our family history. Towards the end, we will have a roundtable discussion, my parents included, to reminisce about our favorite family vehicle, the 1985 tan Volkswagen Vanagon with a loose middle seat and a hot dog roaster antenna. To start us off, here is the oldest sibling, my sister Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am the oldest sibling, and I will be talking about our 1978 Fiat Brava. Just as most kids do, I had big dreams for what my first car would be. I wanted something stylish, cute, and sporty. A cherry red Volkswagen Cabriolet convertible would be the perfect car. I imagined driving around town with my friends, top down in such a cool vehicle. When I finally got my driver's license, I was ecstatic. And so were my parents. Being the oldest of 4 children, they had another driver in the house to help shuffle everyone to our various activities. A third vehicle made sense. So my parents looked into getting one. Was it the car of my dreams? Not even close. Instead of the cherry red convertible Volkswagen Cabriolet, we got a 1978 Fiat Brava. Imagine a boxy sedan that was gray with orange rust spots on it. But it wasn't just your typical gray car. It was primer dull gray. It was like someone had decided to paint the car, but quit after putting on the primer. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but in the case of the Fiat, the interior matched up well with the exterior. Occasionally, I'd get some bleach water to wipe away the mold growing on the seatbelts. I wondered if it was due to the lack of heat in the car, because there wasn't any heat. During the cold months, I'd keep a small blanket to put over my lap to keep my legs warm as I drove. Defrosting the window was challenging without warm air. The fan would work, but without heat, the fog wouldn't clear. Unable to drive with fogged-up windows, I would use my sleeves, jacket, or sweatshirt lying around to clear the fog until it finally dawned on me to keep a rag in the car to take on that job. Most people like to listen to the radio or music on their drives. If you had a super fancy car back in 1994, it contained a CD player. The Fiat was not a fancy car. It did not contain a CD player. It didn't even have a cassette player. In fact, there was no radio. There was evidence that a radio used to occupy the gaping hole in the middle of the dash from the wires sticking out, but no radio. Instead, I'd fill the car with my own songs I'd sing or rehash a conversation with myself. The quiet gave me good time to think. The Fiat had also a few other quirks to go along with its drab appearance and lack of heat and tunes. The left turn signal didn't work. The right one did, but the left one for some reason didn't. So being a diligent rule follower, especially after learning how to safely drive a car from Leo, my driver's ed instructor, who later was on an episode of Cops, every time I needed to turn left, I would roll down the window and stick my arm straight out to signal I was turning left. Rain or shine, even though I may be freezing already in my heatless auto, I'd let the drivers around me know of my intentions. I miss our old Fiat. I have many memories from driving with my friends from high school in that ugly car. From the time Malia and I worked on our science project and accidentally broke a mercury thermometer in the back seat, to the time Lori was tired of the fabric from the ceiling drooping down on her and put push pins in an artistic way to keep it up. There were numerous stories from hanging out driving together in that junker. The Fiat finally went to car heaven after Benjamin, you'll hear from him soon, was driving it, and he rear-ended the car in front of him when the brakes went out. Being just one of the many quirky cars our family had, I loved that the Fiat was the first one that was my car. It kept me humble, it made me resourceful, and it got me to where I needed to go.
Up next is my brother Ben and his wife Emily. They've been together since high school, and our families have known each other for even longer. She was around for most of the vehicles we owned and offers an outsider's perspective on what life was like with the Rorem vehicles. Hello, Ben and Em. Please introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'm Benjamin Rorem. I'm the oldest brother, and the second born in the family.
And I'm Emily Rorem. I'm married to Ben.
And we dated in high school, so we have a lot of shared experiences driving some pretty amazing vehicles.
And I do share many of the experiences and memories of all of the family cars. Yeah.
Do you remember the Dodge Caravan?
I do remember the Dodge Caravan. That was maybe one of the more comfortable of the family cars, was the Dodge Caravan.
And by comfortable,
like the seats were comfortable.
I think it was the most nondescript, I guess, most boring vehicle that we owned.
But the funny thing was, I think there was this impression that it was like the safest or the most reliable of the cars that you had.
I think it's because we got it and it seemed like the most new, even though I think we got it and it was 6 or 7 years old maybe. And it was this maroon color and it was fading and peeling, like the trunk and the top of the car was like peeling off. So we called it the Peel Mobile. And it wasn't actually maybe the safest. So I remember that car as being completely boring on the inside and on the outside. But we drove it for some reasons, and I think every time we tried to go up into Seattle or take off for, a date night or something like that, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to have the fun adventure of trying to push start a Volkswagen Vanagon.
It definitely felt like the least cool car.
It was definitely the least cool car. by far the least cool car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember much. I remember a couple of trips with it, but there was one time where I don't know why we did, but we were taking off to go to Seattle, which is about an hour drive from Olympia.
We took off. It was senior skip day.
I don't remember that.
It
Maybe?
was.
Okay.
It was senior skip day. So you and I decided that we were going to go up to Seattle for the day for senior skip day.
Did we tell our parents?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't think so.
But I'm pretty sure we took that van because we thought that it was the most reliable and it had the most likelihood of getting us to Seattle without problems.
Yeah. And I remember we were driving and we were kind of coming into Seattle where it's like you've passed the airport and you start to come into the Seattle area and you can see downtown, and there's kind of a little kind of, you come over a crest and start to head down into the downtown area. And I remember driving the car and all of a sudden the car just completely shut off. Like it went dark. We went dark.
Which is a pretty scary thing in the middle of I-5.
Yeah, it's in the
middle
of
lane
I-5.
of I-5.
Yeah, totally. Everything went off. It's like the key just decided to turn itself off. And
especially when you're 18 years old.
Yeah, I remember saying something like, "I think the car's died or the car's not on anymore," and it couldn't accelerate. And you can't turn the steering wheel very well because the steering wheel requires the car to be on for you to really move it. Couldn't use the brakes, and so I just sort of let the car sort of come to a coast and stop, and I tried to maneuver it off the side of the road. And I remember thinking at that point, like, this is going to be a really bad situation as cars are flying by us at 65 miles an hour.
I was worried because we were 18 years old, skipping school on senior skip day, and here we were
Busted.
On the side of I-5 with a dead car.
Yeah, and we didn't have cell phones.
No, I mean, nobody had a cell phone.
1998 or something like that.
Yeah, 97 or 98.
Yeah. And I remember we pulled off side of the road and I stopped the car, and I don't remember how many times, but I remember trying to start the car once and it didn't start. And then I think it was maybe the next time I started the car and it decided to just turn back over, and it started. And I just put it back into gear and quickly got us back on the freeway and kept driving like nothing had ever happened. Did it freak you out?
Oh, totally. I mean, I didn't come from a family that had cars that died like that, so I didn't know what to do, but I had every confidence that you would figure it out. So
I had one,
either that
I
or
had
we were
one
going to
trick.
get towed and we were going to get caught skipping school.
Yeah, it was one trick. It was try the ignition again. If that didn't work, I didn't know what we would have done.
But that's what's funny is then we just kept going, right? I mean, we hadn't gotten to Seattle. We finished our day. We went to the zoo. We got Dick's Burgers, and then we drove home.
Yeah, I don't remember anything that we did that day.
Did you like take the car in? Did you tell your mom what happened?
Probably not. I doubt it. We might have said that it died. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I did say that, nothing else would have happened. They would have probably just nodded and say, "Yeah, that sounds about right."
That was the day that the Peelmobile no longer was the safest car in the family.
Then you really have to start, picking your battles.
Yeah.
Which car are you going to take for a 60-mile drive north? The Volkswagen Vanagon that might just very well not start ever?
I think the Volkswagen might have become the safest car, the most reliable car after that day.
Up next is the third in line, my brother Jacob. Hey, Jake.
I'm Jacob. I'm the third of four, the middle brother. I'm talking today about a 1984 Subaru station wagon. For many teenagers growing up in America's suburbs, a driver's license and a car opens the world. A car equals freedom. For me, the first car I felt was really mine was a 1984 Subaru wagon. It was a car I knew well, for it had been my grandma's car my entire life. When the time came for her to have a car with power steering, anti-lock brakes, airbags, air conditioning, and other modern conveniences and safety features, I got her Subaru. What did a high schooler need with power steering or airbags anyway? I slapped a hula girl figure on the dash, reset the push buttons on the radio, and drove without a care in the world. Gas was cheap, and my teenage sense of invincibility was strong. When I left for college, the Subaru stayed behind, and a Honda Accord served my brother and I in Spokane for the next 3 years. After this brief driving affair, it was decided I would take the Subaru across the mountains for my senior year. The car had seen better days and wasn't running as smoothly as it once had, but after cleaning off the mold and praying over it with Mom and Dad, I set off across Washington, cruising down I-90 in the summer heat with all the windows down, the smell of the peppermint fields in George wafting on the breeze. Those later years were the most fun. The idle on the engine was crazy high. I once got it up to 25 miles per hour on a flat stretch just by putting it into drive. I drove on a broken axle for weeks. It's chung 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 chung, providing a steady drone. It started a habit of dying while I was driving. I would have to coast on the shoulder or into a parking lot and wait 5 to 10 minutes before it would restart. Or if it didn't, call my brother for a lift. During this year, I cultivated an almost cavalier attitude toward the car, fully expecting the engine to explode or something else to happen every time I drove, ready for anything that may occur. My youthful sense of freedom behind the wheel expanded, freeing me from having any kind of expectation for the Subaru or for its performance while driving. The Subaru was a simple, durable, and easy-to-drive car. Like most of the other cars I drove growing up, I grew not to expect much of it, and in return, it gave me everything a teenage driver could want. Except AC, and power steering, and a CD player, and airbags, and an engine that worked. But at least it had 4 wheels and started when I turned the key. Usually.
For this last segment, I recorded a roundtable discussion about the one family vehicle that has tied us all together, the 1985 tan Volkswagen Vanagon. I was able to convince everyone to carve out some time during our family vacation this past June to sit down and reminisce about this unforgettable car. Please enjoy. Sibling.
I'm Jacob. I am the third of 4 children.
I'm Sarah. I'm the oldest and the only girl.
And I'm Benjamin, and I'm the oldest boy and the second born.
I'm Martha, and I'm Mom.
And I'm the dad, Dave.
Okay, so let's talk about the Vanagon. When did we buy the Vanagon?
1991. It was in 1985.
It was a 1985 Vanagon.
Yeah.
Tan color.
Goldish,
right?
And the second Vanagon we owned.
It was the second Vanagon we owned. The first one was a blue Vanagon.
Two-tone blue.
Yeah, two-tone blue.
So I guess we can kind of just start talking about memories that we had. What I think is emblematic of that car being a part of our family is that it survived like so many phases of each of our lives. Like I remember being a little kid in the car going camping, and then I also drove it in high school. Mm-hmm. So to have it span like all of us learning how to drive, being a part of it, I think it's kind of a significant vehicle for as many quirks as it is. And I do remember when we got it, it did have a radio.
It did. It had a radio for a while.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a time when I remember Dad was sliding the little heat vent selector. You know, there was a little sliding bar. And he slid it over, and then the radio cut out, and it didn't work ever again.
Just that one move, solid.
Dad killed the radio.
Cut it out.
Video didn't kill the radio.
Dad killed the radio.
Dad killed the radio.
But I do remember it had the face that you could lift off, and I thought that the face broke, and we could never get it back on.
That was the second radio.
We got a second radio?
Yeah, because it wasn't the original radio.
Yeah, we got a pretty sweet aftermarket radio. Remember, I think it had the pull-off
Yeah, that's
face.
what he's talking
that's
about.
what I was saying. Yeah.
It had the pull-off face, so people wouldn't steal it.
That's
Because
right.
that was
They
the
wouldn't
primary
steal
concern. People stealing our radio out of the Volkswagen.
The doors weren't locked most of the time, so it would have been easy
Heaven
to get into it.
forbid we lost the radio.
Yeah.
I think the real story of the Vanagon really is all these moments when things broke on it and just stayed that way. Like the radio eventually breaking.
It
No
never
new
got
radio.
fixed afterwards.
No.
The radio antenna breaking or falling off. I don't know.
Oh, I thought it broke before the radio broke.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So
But then-
we replaced it with a hot dog roaster.
Yeah, and just shoved it in there and it worked.
And that was the antenna for the rest of the life of the van. Well, at least
How long
we
was that
needed-
for? I don't remember
Years.
ever having a radio antenna that was a legit radio
No,
antenna.
because I think it was going on a camping trip.
It was on a
that
camping trip.
That it flew
the
off.
original one flew off. And so that's why we had hot dog roasters. So Dad just took a hot dog roaster and stuck it where it would be, and it stayed in there.
necessity is the mother of invention, right
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And it had the army man that we eventually put on there.
Who put the Army Man on
Army
it?
Man on?
I think I put that on there.
There was just a toy army man that hung, like the hot dog roaster had a little ring on the top, and it was shoved in there.
No, it would stay down.
And it would stay
down, but then as
down.
you
It
would
just-
speed up,
it
it
would
would
go-
move up the hot dog roaster like a flag.
Yeah, till it got to the.
Got to the ring because then
And when it
couldn't
got to the
fly.
ring, you're going about 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, you're going fast.
Yeah.
That's how you could tell.
Which is one of the speedometers that worked. Was
Yes.
the Army man.
was the army man. Yeah,
Because one of the
gauges.
other speedometers broke.
and it stayed broken for a
It
long
stayed
time.
broken.
The
The
speedometer
Let's be clear about that. We drove that for years without ever knowing how fast we were going.
We
You'd have-
did.
You'd have to shift it, and then looking at the RPMs and what gear you were
Yeah.
in, you would kind of gauge, and you'd have to gauge by traffic.
Yeah, like fourth gear.
You're going about
you're
40
going about
miles.
40, 45 miles an hour.
But do you guys remember going on camping trips and going like into the mountains and how we'd have to sometimes pull over into the shoulder because we would go so slow
To let
getting up,
everyone else pass
semi
us.
trucks zooming by us as they were and we're crawling along up the hill.
There's a lot of good memories about that. As I talked about earlier, one of my favorites was going up the mountain and coming around a corner, and there's a hitchhiker. And we were going so slow, the hitchhiker thought we were stopping for them and came walking up to the car. And my memory, if it serves me right, was we had no choice. At that point, it was sort of like, I guess we're stopping. And we gave him a ride. He got into the car. We gave him a ride up the mountain pass.
Were we all there? I don't remember this at all.
I think we were going camping. I don't know what we were doing. And I think he sat in the front seat. He was a nice dude, but we had no intention of picking him up.
We were just going
But
so slow.
we were going so slow. He thought we were.
It's in there.
One of the things I loved about that car was how roomy it was as a kid.
Oh my gosh,
It was.
there's
You
so
know,
much
bench
room.
seats, you could lay down and sleep.
Yeah.
On
Which we
long
would.
trips, like
Yeah.
we took a trip over to like Eastern Washington, and like we would rotate who got to sit in the way back on top of all the
yeah.
sleeping bags.
And on top-
Totally not
Seat
safe for a
belts.
child.
Yeah.
And also, that's where the engine was. But I remember driving down to California when I was probably about 6. Yeah. We left at like butt crack early in the
Yeah.
morning. But I remember Ben always being in the back because he had like the pillow back there, and he like called the back seat and slept back there most
I
of the
did.
time.
I remember sleeping back there a lot.
Yeah, on the
I-
way down.
I do
I was
remember-
not buckled in.
we were, and somebody was always on the floor, and then somebody was like laying on the back seat.
Where were our parents during this?
I think
We
they
were
were driving.
in the front seat.
They were in the front seats, buckled in safely. I do remember going to maybe that same Eastern Washington trip because the van did not have air conditioning because it was old.
It was
and they
old.
didn't come, and that was a luxury item that we didn't have in our cars growing up. And
None of our cars, I think, had air
no, I
conditioning.
remember the first one that came, and it just felt like. But I think I was like 18 when they got. It was probably
Air conditioning?
It was probably the Peel Mobile.
It was the Peel Mobile.
The Peel
I think.
Mobile that had air conditioning, but it didn't have air conditioning. We did this road trip on Eastern Washington. It was so stinking hot and you had to have every window rolled down, and then the side windows that slid. So the side windows that slid. So it was just like blasting hot air on us, and Mom got a spray bottle and would like spray us with water to kind of cool us down because it was so hot on this trip. But at one point we did stop at some lake and went swimming, and it felt really Banks Lake, and we went swimming.
It was fun.
There was one point that too, as the van started to kind of get older, the carpet came out of the van, and I don't
Yeah.
know what that was. If it was somebody had thrown up or the dog.
Well, there was
or
someone
it
that
was-
did. Remember when we went to was it Long Beach?
It was Long Beach.
It was Long
and
Beach.
we were driving back. I was driving in a car behind. I think I was driving it must have been.
I was driving the Peel Mobile behind.
is that
so
what
you
it
must
was?
have
Yeah,
been in the
so I was
car
not
with
past the
me,
rest
and
of
we
them
had
in
like
the-
all the kids.
and
van
Dad
together.
and Mom were driving the Volkswagen, and Tom and his friend Ben Elmore
Because we got Ben
And our
because
dog.
he wasn't feeling good.
And our dog, Sam.
and our golden retriever Sam.
Yeah.
And we were coming around. I don't know where we were, but
near-
close
near
to the
Willapa
bay.
Bay, yeah.
Willapa Bay.
And the tide had gone out, and the Volkswagen slows down to a stop, and we're driving behind it, so we slow down too. And then we see the door open. Dad comes around. The dog jumps out, runs immediately to the muddy water of the bay.
Well, he was covered.
He
in
was-
vomit.
He has stuff all over his back.
because
And
someone
then
had
Tom
gotten
kind of
sick.
saunters out and doesn't look good. And well, I guess what had happened is Tom, you'd thrown up, or someone had thrown up all over the back of the dog.
I wasn't feeling good when we left, and that was
It's because you had Skittles and hot dogs all weekend.
It's pretty true.
That's what
mostly
you
what
ate.
he ate.
You and Ben Elmore only ate Skittles and hot dogs.
like, I remember at the gas station, I was like, I'm really not feeling good. I want to ride with mom and dad. So I like switched vans. And so it was mom and dad and I and Sam, the dog. And we're driving around, and like the road out to Long Beach, it's like, it gets pretty windy around
yeah.
Willapa Bay. And mom and dad were talking about like, what are we going to make for brunch tomorrow? And they're like talking about, let's get some sausage and waffles. And I'm feeling so nauseous that I'm like, I think I'm going to, and I just like puked all over the dog, like all over the dog. So like dad was like, oh gosh, had to pull over. And then you brought him down to go wash him off in the bay.
The idea was to get him out in the sound and at least wash the barf off. However, there was low tide, and he sank up in the mud up to his chest. And so...
But none of the barf got
none of the barf got off. We had a little bottle of water that we got some of it off, and a towel. I think we got some dirty clothes and kind of wiped them off and tried to get it and just said, oh, well, let's just get home. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the more infamous stories of growing
So maybe
up.
that's when we got rid of the carpet.
It
Tom,
might have been.
I'm just saying, you make us sound like the Clampetts. It wasn't that bad.
And the
great.
Volkswagen had some quirks to it that eventually became, well, quirks everyone knew. It smelled like waffles after a while because I think it was leaking antifreeze. It didn't have a speedometer that worked for years.
And the dashboard lights from the time I started driving never worked. So I had to turn on the little light.
Yeah.
Which is
at
right
night,
on the
which
left
is
side.
right next to the driver.
Yep.
So I just reach up and I just
And it was
turn
a
on to
tiny
see
light.
like it was just like maybe a couple
Tiny
inches,
light,
a couple of inches like, and then just to see how fast I was driving.
Yep. Had no radio.
Well, it did for a while because I had the face off.
When we
radio.
were younger, when we weren't driving,
When we weren't driving, it did have a radio. But when, like in high school, I never had a radio.
I think I did have a radio. I can't remember.
Yeah. I do remember one time, because I drove it when the gearbox didn't have that. So it was like shooting in the dark whether or not you were in the right gear.
You'd know by like...
And that's what I learned on. It was a broken gearbox. But I remember when we got that fixed, the guy was like, oh, your dashboard light is broken. I fixed it. And like it was like it was like halfway through high school that I like all of a sudden we had
I never experienced
that.
it.
It was
with a light.
illuminating.
Was it the years? Were these the years where the sliding side door also was stuck shut?
It was stuck shut. You could
you had to
that
go
was the
through
other
the
thing is
front
that
door.
when people
See this?
go
I
to
was
the
out of
bed,
the house. I was done.
We also lost the panel on the door, right?
Yes, there was no panel.
So there was no
Yeah.
panel on the
So
inside
for a
of the door.
while, the other thing was that like for a while you could actually like the wire that connected the handle didn't work, but you could like pull the wire hard
that's
enough
right.
and it would
That's
open.
right.
Oh,
Do you-
these are great memories. I remember these
Do you
now.
also remember how the back, when you'd lift up the hatch, the hydraulics had stopped working?
Yeah.
So we had a big stick
Yeah.
in the back that you
Yep.
had to like
Yep, that's a good
hold
point.
it up.
I
You
totally
needed to
remember
load the van. But if the stick shifted down, it would slam on your head.
I do remember that. Again,
Yeah.
great example of things that we just lived with. You know,
Well, it's
why
just-
fix it?
It's
Why
just
fix it?
how it works. It's like, why spend the money on it's more of a cosmetic issue, and we could be we could put a hot dog roaster in. We could carry a big stick in the back to hoist the back up.
Do you remember
And-
when it would? The other things, some of the things I remember is occasionally when it would get icy
Yeah.
and we'd have the windshield ice over. We didn't have ice scrapers, and I remember the thing that I would always go to is we always had CD cases in there
No, they were tape cassettes.
or tape cassettes. Is that what it was?
Cassette cases.
Yeah.
And that's how I would scrape the windshield.
Yes. I also remember when we went down to California, we stopped in Redding overnight, and we went to Taco Bell for dinner. And one of the things we got was like those pintos and cheese, but we didn't get any utensils. So Dad rummaged in the glove compartment, found one of those tape cassette cases, broke it into like little spoon pieces,
I don't even remember that.
and we ate it with the spoon. These like makeshift spoons.
That was the first and last time we went to Taco Bell, I think.
At least as a family,
It
yeah.
was vacation.
We were on vacation.
Because we got it takeaway and we went to a park, so we were stuck.
I did. Did you guys all need to learn to jump start it or like push start it because
Yeah.
we
That
did
was
have
a
some
family
push starting.
affair. Push starting.
when you'd be like
You had to always be conscientious of where you parked.
you did.
Are you
You could
parking
be on a-
uphill or downhill? 'Cause if you're parking uphill, you're in trouble. You're
Yes,
just not
if
going
it
to get
was
it.
a-
Wouldn't. It wasn't like predictable when it would start or not start. So you sort of had to always be ready for it. I remember having my friends get out and push a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember having to push it once or twice by myself, and that was difficult.
Or the one time when Jake was like 13 and I was at the library and we couldn't quite get it and he kept having to push it back and forth and back and forth.
Somebody
He's like
finally
sweating.
I do remember. I remember like just going through the Safeway parking lot as a family, pushing the Vanagon, so my dad could pop the clutch and start it.
I'm sure all of Olympia knew our car. There's that
Did you
crazy
see
family again that
Little Mi-
has to
the
push
mo-
start their
the
car.
movie Little Miss Sunshine where
I
they had
totally
to
like
do
that.
that. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that is our family
So
when the door
familiar.
falls off.
Oh, yeah.
That movie, I was like, that is how I grew up. Except it was a Volkswagen bus.
Yeah, it's been through a lot.
It was a good car.
It was a good car.
It's also so like it was built so differently than other cars. The things that were in it, like where you check the oil, you pull down the rear license plate.
That's true.
I totally forgot that.
You pull it down, and there's where the
I remember one of my first experiences with trying to figure out the car is I remember the Volkswagen had one of the readings on the dashboard seemed really high, and I thought it was the oil, or it was really low. I thought that it needed oil, and it was a temperature reading, and I didn't realize that. So I was just putting oil in the car, a lot of oil, and I put like four quarts in. And I remember telling Dad finally, and he was like, "What are you doing? Like that is not an oil sensor. That is a totally different reading. How much oil have you put in?" And I showed him, and he was really kind of upset with me. Like that's not an oil issue.
blow a gasket
Now I
there.
understand why
So
my
now-
muffler
Why
caught
you
on
caught
fire.
on
Yeah.
fire?
I might be responsible for the fire, but I didn't know any different. I was like 16 years old.
Man.
What else are you gonna do about it? But I do remember pulling down the back.
It's like a little
license plate.
mailbox
Yeah.
latch.
Yeah, and the battery was behind the, I think, passenger seat.
Yeah.
So you flip the passenger seat. Right behind it, there's this little like
Oh, yeah.
place. That's where the battery
Right.
was.
That's
Which,
right.
You know, that's where fires start sometimes, and could have all burned alive at that point. But
I'm surprised that the van kept us safe. Like we were safe.
that's complete luck at that point. I don't think that kept it. No.
Well, when we were talking about going up the mountains, that was one of the most terrifying things for me because we would drive up in mountains and you would see like the mountain cliff, and that thing is not. It tips easily.
You don't want to go fast. Luckily, it wouldn't go
It
fast
wouldn't
on
go
mountains, so unless you were coming down.
Cool. Well, I think that's all I have. I think unless you want to have any last minute things.
Thank you for joining us on KROR.
Thanks, fam, for doing this.
radio.
My radio voice.
You're welcome, Tom. Thanks for having us.
This week's song is entitled Rusty Old Junker. It features myself on guitar, vocals, and bass, William Mapp on drums, Alex Huth on keyboards, and Steve Miller on electric guitar. Please enjoy.
Listen up, I know that we are stuck. I want to get this damn thing on the road. Listen here, I'll grab the steering wheel, so lean forward, push as hard as you can. We'll soon be on our way down the avenue, thankful that this time we are on the move again. Baby, all this time on the shoulder gives us confidence and makes us bolder. Or maybe not. Listen up, I know that we are leaving in a pre-dawn haze for the coastline. Bucket seats, middle row, makeshift antenna for a broken radio. Baby, all this time in the back row, musty smells, dog hair covering head to toe. It's the thread that holds us fast to each other. Broken car, quiet dad, crazy mother. The memories we have constantly retold. This family door with its waiting open wheels on the road brought me to the place I am today. And the lessons that I learned with my family, they will never fade. I've got a family of my own in the backseat, but it's incomplete without a rusty old junker in an unattached middle seat. I've got a family of my own in the backseat, but it's incomplete without a rusty old junker with an unattached middle seat.
Well, that's it, folks. That is the end of season 1 of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and keep an eye out for the special bonus material that'll be coming out soon. Again, if you are interested in telling a story or know someone who has a great story to tell, please get in contact with me at storiestowritesongsabout.com or email me at storiestowritesongs@gmail.com. Special thanks to my family for taking the time out of our vacation to do this episode specifically, and to the incredible musicians who played on this track. Theme song and music by Lowlands and Tom Rorem. Stories to Write Songs About is brought to you by Muffler Productions. You know, I had a dream about a muffler once, but when I woke up, I was exhausted. Thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you next time.